All right. So, my name is Sean Moore. This is week one's homework. I'm going to read the question and then I'm going to share some kind of insight into all four questions. The first question is: what is your personal mindset regarding ministry versus administration within your church or parachurch organization? Uh, I don't understand the difference between the two. I guess I understand the question. I just don't understand how that actually relates to what I actually do because I don't see them separate. So administration and ministry, I think it's all called ministry. So I don't separate the word administration from the word ministry. I think there are parts of ministry that have to do with business. There are parts of ministry that have to do with pastoral care. There are parts of ministry that have to do with worship. And so I don't see a difference between these nuances. And so the church carries, because I think most churches are 501c3s. I believe they're nonprofit businesses. And so if you are a nonprofit business person, as in a pastor or a staff person, you have to govern by particular rules because of uh, tax, or you don't get taxed on things. And so I don't think there's a difference between administration and ministry. I just think that we may do some things that secular companies might do, um, but yeah, I don't even feel comfortable using the word secular and Christian. I don't talk like that. So the first question kind of throws me off because, as far as I'm concerned, um, because I'm a disciple of Jesus and I'm leading a group of people who tend to worship God, and we are kind of put together under particular rules that have to govern the state, and also rules that are incorporated in the Bible, that it's all just ministry. And so that's my thought on question number one. I would separate them. Matter of fact, when I first saw the question, ministry versus administration, it just like I don't get it, because there are things in which you do that are administrative that are still ministry. I think it goes down to the question: are you a Christian fisherman, or are you a fisherman who's a Christian? That's how I see it. Second question: are there aspects of administration that Donald Sr. discusses in The Gift of Administration that, even after reading his perspective, you still do not consider as ministry? After going through it, I actually don't. I see it all as ministry. Here are a couple of things that I thought were interesting in the reading that I just want to point out. It was somewhere in the introduction. He says, "I firmly believe that various expressions of the work of administration, while learning from secular experiences and knowledge, can find their grounding and rationale within the very nature of the Christian mission. In short, administration, like preaching, teaching, and healing, is also expressions of the gospel." Yeah, it's all the gospel, right? I mean, I believe you find this with Peter and Paul. You find this in the early churches, where you get some that are able to preach, some are teachers, some are healers, some can speak in tongues, others are administrators, and so it's all the gospel, right? It's pushing the work forward. So if you're going to have people out on the front line declaring God's word, you need people behind them doing administration work and everything else. I think it's also somewhat like the very first deacons, that the people started clamoring around, hey, what about us? And they're like, well, we're busy with the gospel. Maybe we should create a system of other workers that are in good standing that can also do some of this work. And that's how I believe deacons come to be. Let's see. Another thing that I thought was in chapter 3 on page 43, which says, what is our fundamental purpose and why do we exist as an organization or an institution? What impact does our institution intend to have on society? I think that is not only a secular mindset, but it's also a Christian mindset that we need to be asking ourselves, what exactly is our fundamental purpose? And again, I think it's this idea of not having the proper language, or not having a mindset that separates myself from the world. And I'm not saying that using terms like administration and ministry means you're separating. My mind doesn't go there, right? And so there are multiple things that I have in common with other business owners that are secular that I also share because we kind of have the same formula of how to do things. I tend to see the church as a institution of higher learning. So I kind of lead through this understanding that churches are colleges, and what do you expect out of a college, and that if people come in, they're expecting something from you, and what we actually give is how do you grow your spirit, which is pedagogy, education. How do you love other people, pedagogy. I think everything in which we're trying to give to people is somehow related to pedagogy, and I think that we always say that Christ was this phenomenal teacher. Those are some things that I got out of question number 2. What cultural attitudes are prevalent within your church, from community boards, congregation, etc., around the distinction between ministry versus administration? Again, I've only been at this church for about 4 months or 3.5 months. I was appointed here during the appointment system, and I've never heard anyone mention the idea of separating administration from ministry. I think folks just do the work to run the church the best they can. And if that happens to fall in a particular category, we don't say, well, that's not ministry because ministry looks like this. What you're actually doing is administration work. It's just kind of it's all ministry. That's how I kind of take that. If there's a culture, so as an anthropologist, when I see words like culture, I get really jazzed because I study this. And so my understanding of culture from an anthropologist or an anthropological view was that culture are rites, rituals, traditions, customs, and habits that get reinforced by rewards and sanctions. So you're asking me, what are the rites, rituals, traditions, customs, and habits that get rewarded by sanctions or rewards through our boards and our congregation as it relates to ministry versus administration? And again, we don't have a culture of separating those two broad categories or those two broad phenomena. We just don't. The last question, how does the content of Dangers of a Single Story apply to your ministerial context? Number one, I think it's, I enjoy the video. I've seen it a couple times. So every time I see it, I'm like, oh, wow, I learned something new. And what I picked up this time was the word Nikali, right? The word Nikali, which means to be greater than another, right? I didn't pick up that the first couple of times that I remember watching the video, but this time I picked it up. And it's the idea that if you literally keep telling the same story over and over, and her example was the idea of Mexican people and this overwhelming understanding of them being placed in a negative view by their behavior, right? So these people are always doing negative things. And she shows up there, she's like, oh, wow, this is not the case at all. And I think the way the power of a single narrative can impact any church is this idea that there's only one way to get things done. And I do believe, as a matter of fact, I just saw this take place in real time during a finance meeting where there was someone who had made a statement and someone had made mention of maybe another idea. And that person flat out said, there's only one way to do this. And this is the way I'm telling you to do it. I thought, oh, that's not correct, number one, because there's multiple ways to do things. But again, that's a prime example of a real life example in our church of issues that take place with this single story. And I do believe that I've been able to catch in the short time here these single narratives that that I'm going to eventually have to deal with, because as the associate pastor for the first year, I will then become the senior pastor next year, and I'll have to deal with these issues. And so as I'm watching and learning, it's interesting because there are a few people who believe that their way of doing things or their their single narrative is the right narrative in which navigates reality. And these are people that tend to be a little older or more financially secure, and that's just the way it is. So the church that I'm currently a part of is a multicultural, or should I say it's multiracial, half black, half white. And those that are black, the majority of the folks that are black in our congregation are African, who have immigrated from Africa. There are a few African Americans who were born here, and the majority of the whites that are here are European descent. So I would say that we are definitely multiracial. Multicultural, we are not. So when I use the word multicultural, I'm talking about, again, rites, rituals, traditions, customs, and habits, and ways of thinking that implement things across the board. And we don't do that here as of yet. Yep, that's my homework. Take care. Peace.